Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto become the prototype ninja and got harem? Part 1. Huge shout out to theaceoffire for this story. If you want more awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Naruto collapsed into his bed, his worn body nearly comatose from a long evening. The tattered mattress felt heavenly on his sore body, but his mind didn't care right now. Today had been pretty terrible, really. Once again he had failed the graduation exam at school. Designed to be so simple even a civilian with little training could pass with ease, the boy had always experienced difficulties. Not that this was new, of course. For 13 years he had suffered from slights and outright abuse, to the point where Naruto had come to expect it really, but he had pushed through. When they would only sell him oversized, poor-quality orange clothing, he would hand-sew it to make it wearable. When he realized his books were outdated and sometimes outright fraudulent, he had stolen a classmate's copies, Sasuke team's actually. Stuck-up prick. Of course, it had taken up to his first failure at the academy to learn how to read well enough to realize how badly he was getting educated. And it took halfway through the second failure to learn the one skill that had possibly saved his life, the henjutsu, the transformation technique. The ability to be not Naruto for a set amount of time. With the ability to actually read on his own and to look like a random civilian asking for help, his world had vastly improved. He could get into the library without sneaking, his food budget nearly quadrupled as he avoided getting rotten produce and was charged reasonable rates. He even learned most of what he was supposed to have been taught before being thrown out of the orphanage. He would change into a stranger, bribe a student to skip class, and take their place instead. Oh, he had experienced a few close calls, but at least now he had a strong grasp on reading, writing, mathematics, and so forth. Obviously, though, this wouldn't work in the classes given for and by ninjas. True, his transformation technique was unique and awesome, actually changing him rather than wrapping him in an illusion. A real change, impossible to see through at all, except it kept failing. He wasn't sure why really, but no matter how long he kept working on his chakra control exercises, his body would occasionally flare up with a painful surge of energy. At the worst times, not only would it disrupt his current disguise, but the actual increase in available energy was permanent, and he would have to retrain through all the control exercises again or lose all progress. And these surges happened when he was trying to escape, or when trying to trick others into providing more information about techniques or life in general. For the longest time he had thought that someone had been actively working against him, but he never caught anyone making hand signs when the surges occurred. For 13 years he had been denied the rights of other children, but no more. His face split into a wide grin as he rubbed his gifted forehead protector again. Iruka-sensei had found him in the forest, after he had been tricked into stealing the forbidden scroll from the Hokage's office and told to learn a skill from it. Within an hour he had found out that he contained a demon nine-tailed fox, that his teacher Mizuki was a traitor to the village, and that Iruka-sensei was willing to take a blade in the back to protect his student. Naruto carefully pulled the cloth straps off and traced the village's symbol etched into the metal buckle, following the shape of the leaf. Seeing his teacher threatened, he had managed to take down Mizuki and capture him. He had earned the right to become a ninja. His face settled into a frown. He had of course found out today that all the hate and trials had a cause behind them as well. The demon sealed inside him was the same giant fox that had killed so many when it attacked on Naruto's birthday. Many of the past insults made sense now. Creature. Monsters. It also explained why someone would stalk him to mess up his techniques. Why someone would try to poison him. To break into his home and destroy his clothing. His furniture. Why giant mobs would form and chase him. Why he was always alone. Why Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, and the closest thing Naruto had to family. Why he would give Naruto strange looks of sadness, of failure. Naruto had assumed that the old man had been judging him, for his failures to graduate, for his failures in general. Now it seemed far more reasonable that Hokage had been blaming himself for the trials Naruto had gone through. The villagers were morons, apparently. Naruto's face twisted into a severe scowl. If he had been a demon, those bastards had tried damn hard to convince him to murder this village. What moron would see a monster and decide to poke and mock it as it grew in strength, because he would grow? Not just because his new headband would allow him into the advanced and secured sections of the library, not just because he now knew enough to both defend himself and when he needed to stop and report actions to the old man. Now he had a skill that could take advantage to all this power he held, the shadow clone technique. The Forbidden Scroll was wrong about its use, surprisingly. It claimed that by splitting your energy in half and applying it to your shadow you could create a single-hit clone that could act with your abilities and knowledge, and return what it discovers back to you. It didn't split your energy in half though, not if you did it right. And Naruto had been surprised by that. No, it just had an absolutely enormous cost to use, but it was a set amount. You could use this technique with less than that amount, at which point it would take the chakra provided, most users gave half, and it would split that amount, and do the whole I'll split this energy thing. But that is actually what made the skill dangerous. You could make 1,000 clones very easily, and they would all split half your total energy up to do so, but since you didn't give them enough power, they couldn't process their memories just after dispelling. Without processing those memories, you would receive thousands of copies of your whole mind, not just a tiny list of changes since creation. The original description of the technique clearly was unaware of this, simply warning that too many clones caused brain death. But for Naruto? He had energy to burn. Making 200 clones did wear him out, but they had all been fully powered. Not only had they processed their memories, but as each one collapsed they shared their processed memories with the other clones, who would check for new and useful information and absorb it. The result had been spectacular. Not only had he beat down that traitor teacher Mizuki, but in those few minutes Naruto had gained almost a week of useful information about the attack. His personal fighting style had actually evolved substantially while fighting the Chunin, as each clone dispatched would share their limited fighting experience, what worked and didn't, and how they had used chakra enhancement or the environment to help gain an edge. They had even shared what tricks Mizuki had used. Instantly the other clones and Naruto had gained that information, and the remaining clones had focused on duplicating the tricks seen, on changing stances and punches to try and do more damage, on working their chakra in different areas of the body to increase or modify damage dealt. And since they all knew what had already been attempted, they all tried different tactics in response. Basically, Naruto had felt the refined experience of attempting hundreds of ideas, most terrible in the beginning but quite a few good ones toward the end. He now had a list of attack stances that seemed to have worked alright, most of them having been refined as the clones started utilizing them during the fight. Even his chakra control had improved, despite the fight being so short. He couldn't wait to actually train with this. Not to mention he could now be seen in the same area as his transformed clones, giving them less scrutiny and preventing the civilians from suspecting anything. The academy really focused on learning only 3 skills: the replacement, the transformation, and the illusion clone techniques. Although his classmates seemed to create illusions instead actually transforming with their skill, sucks to be them really. And that blasted illusion clone technique. A skill that required a fairly high level of chakra control, which became much harder the more chakra you had to work with, and Naruto had chakra in spades. He grinned as he thought back to the fight. From now on, that particular issue would be a strength, not the damned rock around his neck that he had suffered under for the last few years. As the boy fell asleep, eager to begin training and shock the village, to show them exactly what they had been mocking for so long, he failed to notice how abnormally quiet it was in the apartment. Prototype ninja. The Umbu were the most advanced of ninjas in Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves. While the skill categories normally were listed as student, genin, chunin, and jonin, the 2 unlisted ones were Hokage and their Umbu, hand-selected by the leader of the village. Technically they could be any rank, as sometimes it would be helpful for them to hide as fresh students or weak teammates. They had special skills and were held to a much higher standard than the average jonin. In fact, many were strong enough to even give the Hokage himself a bit of a workout, just a bit. Anyone who earned the position quickly found out exactly why the Hokage was held above all. This Umbu had abandoned his name, his home, his private life. Like all Umbu, he was given an animal mask and name, and his was Iguana, and his fury was unstoppable. Over 13 years of failure, trying to avenge his parents, and his dead fiancée, his beautiful soon-to-be wife. He couldn't bear to remember her face anymore, hearing nothing but her screams as Molten Red Fox devastated the village. He had tried hiring hits on this small monster while it was still in the crib, scheming probably about future murders. All attempts failed. He had poisoned the food given to the child for most of his time in the orphanage, but somehow he pulled through at the hospital. Even when he had infiltrated that same hospital and attempted to overdose the brat with painkillers, the bastard had the nerve to keep breathing. 5 years ago, he had lucked out. Iguana had been tasked to assist in clearing out one of the hidden bases of Orochimaru, one of Konoha's legendary Sannin and more legendary traitors. While all the others had been following their own orders, he had managed to fill a storage seal with dozens of vials, containing molds, bloodlines, poisons, raw materials suspected to be required for the deadly curse seal, and even some liquids that he couldn't identify. Many had massive warnings written on the outside. For an evil bastard like Orochimaru to have actually bothered with writing a warning, they must be good. That bastard had no issue experimenting on children, corpses, or himself. He used procedures with less than 1/10 survival rates without care, so these must be devastating. And Iguana had been right. These vials had been some of the only things that could actually hurt Naruto for longer than a few hours. Heck, the stuff he had put in the boy's milk had actually taken 2 days to recover from, but he was out of time. The Hokage would quickly find out that it was Iguana who had encouraged Mizuki to become a traitor, to target the boy. And then he would find out about last week's breaking and entering into the restricted medical experimentation labs. That he had confiscated nearly anything marked dangerous, contagious, or lethal. Quietly, Iguana snuck up to the boy, still clothed in an orange outfit that was the only thing people would sell the monster. A few quick hand signs and the creature fell into an even deeper sleep. Iguana pulled out the syringe. While Mizuki had been running his plot, Iguana had been preparing this as an absolute last resort. He had captured dozens of animals, and tested all the liquids one by one on them, then taken the most horrifying and painful-looking deaths and combined those liquids together. Some cancelled others out and had to be left alone, and in one case he got lucky and the combined effect had been exponential. This liquid was the result of dozens of tests with the most dangerous of materials. Iguana was fairly sure that just creating it was going to cause his death in the next week or so. Just being in the same room as those experiments had been hazardous to his health, not that it would matter after this. With a maniacal grin, Demon leaned over the tiny child and carefully felt his neck, searching and finding the largest artery. Even if they were disturbed, it would be too late. He would avenge his family, his love, he would save everyone. Prototype ninja. Naruto had been dreaming about ramen. Honestly, it was not surprising, considering that one of the first people to ever treat him with respect and friendship, had been a young woman working at a noodle stand. Back then, compared to the trash that the recently evicted orphan had been forced to consume, it was literally the food of the gods. And that was before she gave him a free meal. Suddenly the dream deepened, darkened, collapsed. Naruto was dropped like a rock into shallow, reddish water, some sort of sewer system. It felt familiar, yet he had never been here before. His mind also felt clear now, unlike during his recent dream, but he was hesitant to consider this a real place. For one thing, the walls moved slightly. Like a mountain breathing, the red walls were made of some sort of brick-like stone, slick with moisture. A series of leaking pipes covered the ceiling, not simply following the tunnel he found himself in, but twisting into the walls over and over, like snakes that were in a hurry. For a lack of options, Naruto followed the faint pull down the tunnel, something murmuring behind his ear that this was where he needed to go, needed to be. There was no light, but he could see. The floor was covered in liquid, but he felt dry. He was in a sewer, but there was no smell, no real sounds other than distant dripping, yet he knew the way. When he entered a giant room, one with massive bars covering one wall, he was here, and behind the bars was a giant wall of red fur. Massive beyond belief. Naruto curiously drew closer. The wall of fur shifted, and he was staring into an eye. 3 times his height easily. Oh God, it was the fox, and he was huge. His mind sort of shut down, as he fell into a sitting position, staring at the eye. It looked amused. The room vibrated heavily. So, my jailer has finally appeared. Naruto blinked. I guess so. I didn't actually know you were here, honestly. Or where here is. Aren't you supposed to be in that seal I saw on my belly? A huge, slightly malicious grin exposed massive white teeth. Technically, we are both in that seal. This place is an artificially created bridge between your mind and the seal itself, basically created to allow maintenance on the seal if that blonde ninja had survived the process of binding me. The grin grew much larger. Which he didn't, of course. Got the bastard with my tail at the last minute, though I was aiming for you. Naruto was stunned. Me? Why me? I was like an hour old or whatever. A massive mound of fur shrugged. You were to be my next jail. Killing you would have had me free for the first time in over a couple 100 years. But that woman and man got in the way. The boy felt overwhelmed. Woman? The huge fox snorted with annoyance. That chain-loving jerk who was my former container. His eye latched back onto the child. Just like you are about to be my former container. Naruto blinked. What do you mean? Is there a way to let you out? He frowned. Wouldn't you just destroy the village again? A chuckle rippled through the area. Oh yes, I will destroy this village. Probably every other one I can find as well. Humanity has clearly lived too long. The massive grin looked hungry. And I don't need to be let out. As finally I get to watch your turn into a corpse. The boy shuffled back from the bars a bit. What do you mean? What have I done to you? The huge eye glared at him. You didn't die. Naruto felt something in his mind snap, and suddenly everything seemed a bit more focused. Can you explain a bit? The fur wall chuckled. A last request? Why not? That yellow-haired monkey who sealed me may have been weak, but he was clever. This seal we are in is filled with conditions, requirements, and fail-safes to protect you. I wasn't paying too much attention at the time, but apparently he wanted to help you out due to some sort of family obligation. Missing Naruto's stunned and quickly thinking expression, the fox continued. He thought of nearly everything. Not only can I not escape, but I couldn't contact you unless needed. I had to keep your body alive and mostly healthy, had to stop poisons and heal wounds. But he did make one mistake. The fox turned his grin on fully. He didn't prevent me from volunteering to help. Even as I tried to avoid healing you as much as possible, as I tried to let the various chemicals do as much pain as they could, I always had to fix it in the end. But I can give you bursts of power and shove it into your chakra coils. Naruto felt more things snapping in his mind as he followed along. So, you were sealed by Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage of the village. And if he is family, then maybe Uzumaki is from my mom's side. Seeing as you are kind of being a jerk, it's not Serp. He jerked viciously as something huge plunked in his head, before continuing. Not surprising that you would want to do only the least amount possible to help me. So why give me more chakra? A vicious grin filled the room. I wanted you to explode. Naruto blinked. Ah. Then he smirked, having pushed the stuff about possible family to the side for now. So, how did that work out for ya? I feel pretty non-exploded right now. The fur beast lost his smirk and grumbled. Turns out that your DNA, the Uzumaki stuff, was just barely able to adapt to the massive changes. It even copied some of the healing I was forced to do and helped keep your body together. It takes time for me to build up enough chakra to burst into your coils, and the seal prevented me from getting it high enough to guarantee an explosion. Your damned healing only just kept up with it. The creature glared at the boy. Even worse, your coils kept healing into stronger and larger shapes, meaning I had to start pushing vastly larger chunks of power to even harm you as time went on. Now it takes me weeks to save up enough of a chunk to mess up your control. Naruto blinked before thumping his fist on his palm in understanding. Ah, you are the one boosting my reserves at really awkward moments. Well, can't really get angry at you pulling a prank. I am the king of such. Teeth shrieked at the child. It wasn't a prank. I wanted you to die. Naruto grinned. Well, better luck next time, furball. And thanks for all the wonderful help you provided. I'm sure these massive chakra reserves will be very useful in the future. Suddenly the smile was back on the fox's face. I suppose it would have been. It's sort of a moot point now, though. A huge tail appeared from the top of the bars and pointed at a wall, covered in strange symbols. While you have been shoved here thanks to some guy's skill, an angel from above has apparently decided to grant me a gift by infecting you with something horrible. Naruto jerked to his feet. What? What did he put in me? The fox looked oh so happy. I honestly don't know. It has all kinds of fun toys in it. I've been holding it back from this room so you would have no time to do anything. Wouldn't want you to somehow wake up and get medical treatment, or something. It rested its massive head on its paws and watched as the mortal frantically raced to where the exit had been, finding it sealed with energy. Soon your corpse will split open, my power will be free, and I will destroy everything. It chuckled. Well, after a few years when my body reforms, but to me that is nothing. Don't worry, your precious teacher friend and those ramen people will join you soon after that. Naruto attempted to exit past the strange energy, but quickly tried to calm down. His mind raced as he glanced over at the wall with strange shapes on it. His mind groaned as another ping echoed, just as one of the shapes on the wall cracked. What are those things anyway? The fox glanced over and chuckled. Oh, those? I quite enjoy them. Some ninja with a blank mask wrote a dozen or so of those seals on you as a baby one of the first nights in the orphanage. They restrict thought speed, muscle development, reaction times, almost everything really. In fact, some of the dissonance of those seals helped weaken mine to the point where I could do my chakra gift attack. The one restricting chakra control, I think. Naruto dashed to the wall, examining the surviving seals for patterns, logic, some sort of method to the madness. Just as another one cracked, Naruto realized it had been another mental seal, and suddenly all the seals made more sense, almost intuitively understandable. He looked on in shock at the remaining ones. How can I think at all if I have all these crammed on me? The fox frowned. Well, they didn't prevent development, just made it difficult to think and so forth. And with my powers healing the brain damage being created and so forth, they sort of accidentally trained parts of you. It took you about 500% more effort just to understand concepts at the same speed as an average child would, sometimes worse. Thus you became a genius in some ways just attempting to handle basic things like learning a language. Thank the sage you were bound like this. A smarter kid or one without crippled chakra control would have been much tougher for me to sabotage. Naruto's fingers rapidly traced another mental seal as he watched black ooze start to destabilize it. And this black stuff? The fox's eyes sparkled. Well, brat, the strange combination of materials is not simply destroying your bone marrow and skin and organs and stuff. It is trying to consume your mind. Has to eat through the seals first though. Honestly, this goo has started acting almost intelligent since I began providing it chakra. Naruto gasped. You what? A deep laugh filled the room. Yes. I will ensure your death today, child, and I may even provide a quick merciful death to that shinobi out there who helped me. And once you become brain dead, the Soul Reaper's seal will collapse without triggering the death cascade scenario. It may take me years to reform, but at least I can remember you slowly losing your mind and falling into despair. The boy pushed back the gloom and fear that crushed on his spine and focused. At least as the blackness progressed, it became easier and easier to focus. His eyes tracked the goo, watching exactly how it was dissolving the seals, the steps involved, what took longest. As his mind cleared, the symbols seemed to become obvious in nature. If only he had more time to think about this. Naruto's eyes widened. The fox had basically told him that the goo was going for his mind after it got through the seals, but also that it was acting smarter. He glanced over at the cage and saw some paper on the front of the bars. He quickly dashed over and examined it. Yep, more seals. The fox watched with a patient grin, like someone watching a car wreck. Oh? Feel free to release me sooner. You'll still die, but maybe I will spare some of the meat sacks in your wretched village. Just hug that tag free and die with some dignity. He ignored this, of course. The fox had easily proven itself to be untrustworthy. And a jerk. And some dark part of Naruto was really looking forward to seeing if this idea would work. His eyes scanned the paper, tracing thousands of squiggles and connecting lines at an unheard of rate. There, his hand sliced out, and his finger dripped black with sudden ink. Yes, this may be his mind, but this room was made for seal maintenance. The fox said so. His finger acted like a calligraphy tool as quick changes were shuffled over the shapes. Dozens of changes, made at an inhuman speed, not a flaw made nor any hesitance shown. Naruto had never felt more alive. These runes and seals felt more natural than breathing, so glaringly obvious that this line should be shifted that way and these marks twisted that way. Within moments he stopped and dashed to the center of the room, ignoring the confused look on the fox's face. A few quick symbols and the liquid in the center was being drained into near-infinite storage runes, designed roughly from sections of the tag he had just studied. Soon a dry octagon of flooring was available in the room. The creature began to glare at the boy, frantically drawing some sort of large ritual-like symbol. "Brat, what are you doing over there? And what did you do to the cage seal?" Naruto absently continued to draw. "Over here I am drawing a custom version of the mind seal from the wall over there. Except this one will self-destruct after a certain amount of time. Once activated, I'll basically become comatose for a bit." The fur wall chuckled, watching as another seal shattered on the wall, nearly the last one actually. It was one of the two that forced the boy's chakra coils to expand, while reducing his ability to control them. "So you wish to die while unable to think? That is actually a wise move, I'm impressed." The boy looked up at the fox, with a foxy grin of his own. "Actually, I'm hoping that the one-way entrance I created in your seal will be too tempting for this goo to resist. This seal will just keep me from being targeted, since I have obviously already been destroyed, right? Have fun, furball." With a nearly hysterical laugh, Naruto smashed his palm into the seal, collapsing into a near-death-like state as the shocked fox began to scream in rage and the last seal on the wall cracked, allowing a thick black ooze to invade the room. Prototype ninja. Iguana coughed some blood into his hand. The fumes from the experiments had indeed cost him physically, but watching this childlike demon writhe in pain was worth it all. He had already used what little ceiling he knew to trap the sound of this room, and had killed the Umbu on shift to watch the child, so he should have lots of time to watch the show before exploding the room with all the tags that had been slowly pasting around. After all, there was no reason to hold back. Dying was guaranteed, so why not go out with a bang? He had spent most of his life savings on tags over the last week from different vendors using disguises, claiming a highly destructive mission was coming up soon. And in a way, it was. He looked back at the monster. It was glorious. The creature's right arm had already dissolved into a black goo with some strange sort of blue fungus trying to grow out of it. The left had just turned into a light gray color and started crumbling, as if burned to ash. Both legs looked shriveled, drained of all liquid. The child's husk was covered in black, throbbing veins. His eyes were bleeding heavily, and were cloudy. Quite likely blind. He had ceased screaming an hour ago, and had stopped gurgling 30 minutes after that. Yet his body still had a heartbeat, if the rhythmical pulsing and expressions of pain were any sign. Hell, he still had a torso, as that evil red chakra kept leaking out to attempt and repair the most essential organs and nerves. Even that energy was dying. Iguana chuckled as blood escaped his lips. Even if this soon-to-be corpse caused the worst plague ever known due to the horrendous creation he had infested it with, Iguana would still be a hero to this village. He had achieved what the fourth Hokage couldn't. Slightly swaying, he cackled as his trembling fingers gently added another explosive tag to the walls of the room where the monster slept. Prototype ninja. Kurama, king of the bijou, nine-tailed fox, the walking apocalypse, the Red Death, was terrified. Black goo was slowly entering his prison. Again, he created a barrier of pure demonic energy, trying to delay the inevitable. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew this was his fault. He could have easily burned this goo out of the boy's body, no problem. Would have been near instant cure. Honestly, if he had ever worked with that human brat, his healing would have already surpassed regeneration, to the point where memories and such would have been stored in the cells. Losing a head would have only been an annoyance. At the very least, he could have ignored this goo and been invincible to its advances as the child died. But no, he had carefully modified his energy and fed it to the viruses, the poisons, the raw bloodlines, and who knew what else was in that needle. It had adapted. Stunningly quickly, it had modified itself, using the energy provided to combine the random strains and chemicals into this goo, this black with red veins goo that continued to improve itself as it advanced. Worse, near the moment of Kurama's victory, he had released a massive wave of his power to the goo, feeding it so that the seals would corrode at an even more advanced pace, feeding it to watch a little boy fall into depression and sadness. Now the goo knew how to eat a bijou, and Naruto had provided it an open door with a welcome mat. He watched more and more goo entering the prison, and Kurama realized that the goo had no way of warning the rest of itself that it could not escape here. As far as it knew, this was the kitchen, so everyone should come on down. It was likely that this goo would just gather here, behind a seal created by the death god, the Shinigami himself. That it would become the power behind these complicated seals. As the fox backed into the farthest corner possible, raising barriers of blood-red corrupting chakra, some small part of him wondered what this new power source would do with the child, now crippled and near death's door. Another glimmer of what he used to be, wondered what would have happened if he hadn't dedicated his existence to the destruction of that same child. Most of him raged in fear and anger, as he continued to delay the end of his existence. The black ooze just continued to fill the container and advance, the energy forcing it to evolve, to handle more extreme densities of power, to start using tactics and begin to organize itself. Unknown to either of the combatants, the ooze was slowly waking up as sentient chakra became a progressively larger percentage of its new body. Right now, it simply knew hunger. Hunger, and that there was a large, self-energizing power source just beyond this burning delicious energy. The goo advanced. Prototype ninja. Iguana was almost sitting on the bed now, watching the monster's slow demise with near-orgasmic delight. It was showing its true form now, almost nothing but a skull with flesh melted off, connected to the heart, and one lung, the other long since dissolving into a thick black goo with red veins. He could actually see the brain inside the skull now, watch as the lung desperately breathed air, as the heart frantically beat what blood was left, as the red glow holding this collection of parts and hysterically attempted to fill the few remaining arteries with newly created blood. It was beautiful. Nothing could hurt more than this, he knew. No revenge could be more complete than this. For a silent moment, a blissful moment, he saw the few parts on the bed just stop. It was now nothing more than a monument to his greatness, a small altar of cursed matter to bless his dead family with. As he realized that the show was finally over, he turned back to the wall of explosives and began to make the final hand signs to turn this apartment, and possibly a small section of town, into pure fire. To cleanse everything. He froze. There had been a noise, a wet noise, but a noise nevertheless. He turned back to the few bits of the monster that had made it to the end, and there was now a soft gray glow. Not the red of the demon, and it contained none of the palpable hate and rage that the demon spewed everywhere, nor the blue energy of the bastard child that it had disguised itself as before. The ooze on the bed was slowly being covered in gray energy as well. Prototype ninja. The goo was confused. It had eaten the power source, studied it, and found memories. Somehow, it also now knew what memories were. Within moments, thousands of chunks of ooze each examined individual memory fragments, cleaned them up, identified their contents, and began duplicating them throughout the goo. Most of the goo was a virus, well, physically anyway. Most of its mind, however, was now sentient chakra. When the goo had entered the seal, it had found two other globs of sentient chakra. One a golden-haired man, one a fire-haired woman. Their memories were sent off for examination as well. The concept of backing up memories, of distributing evenly the abilities and powers the goo had encountered were sort of a side effect of being composed of a virus, really. Absorb what will make itself stronger, hide when possible, and most importantly, survive. And as the memories were spread, a new consciousness was born. The memories of a loving father, an adoring mother, and an angry, and angst-filled, fox swirled around. If this had been all available, the result would have likely been a neutral gender creature with a bitter outlook on life who would have looked out for that brat. But the fox also contained the memories of Naruto, which had vastly impressed the goo. That boy was a survivor placed in a position of certain death, and had within moments created near-master level seals with no practice just to save himself. All the memories and possible personalities were impressed by this. More importantly, as far as goo development was concerned, the fox had been sealed before. The chakra globs of the father and mother were not the full souls of either, of course, and did not contain all of their memories. They were created near death, and added to a seal created by the Shinigami himself, just so the poor child could at least know what they looked like. The red-haired mother had been the fox's previous container. And like with Naruto, the creature had a full copy of her memories, from childhood to her last day on Earth. Before her was yet another female Uzumaki. Wife of the first Hokage, Mito Uzumaki, had her full life memorized and found, as well as all the experiences of building a ninja village in trying times, harder times, where those who were not the best were killed constantly. And many years before the Uzumaki were well established, they tested the Bijou sealing process, forcing Kurama within their priestess. He did manage to escape after only 9 years, but still saw her life of worship and hardship. With the full memories of 3 powerful women, the angst-filled years of wandering around blasting stuff really couldn't compare. And the few memories of that loving father were vastly outvoted, so the goo was now female. With February 5th loving Naruto and April 5th generally nice and kind people. If he hadn't been eaten alive, Kurama would have rolled in his prison. After looking through the memories, she crafted a physical form as well, for being a pile of goo was not exactly amazing for someone who had a self-image now. Again, 4/5 of the people had red hair/fur, and a combination of the three women's bodies gave her a lovely shape that could still kick but when required. Her blue eyes were pretty much just copied from Naruto, since both parents had thought they were precious and the two older women loved babies in general. And, now she was stuck in the cage. Great. She absently had some of her body expand and form a fairly comfortable red cushioned chair. Honestly, she wasn't sure why Kurama had stayed so darn huge all the time. At her current size, it was practically the size of a huge training field. She absently assigned some of her body to go off and designed some methods of containing extra mass without extra weight. With the full memories of three master sealers, and their husbands that dabbled in sealing as well, combined with Naruto's non-restricted mind, well, it really shouldn't be a problem. At least, not when Naruto shares access to his mind, once he wakes up. How long did he set that seal for anyway? She absently felt something trying to push its way into her mind, like a genjutsu, an illusion technique. Oh, it was the seal demanding action to be taken to preserve the host. She supposed it was the strange way her mind was set up that prevented her from having to do anything. Not that she wouldn't, of course, this was little Naruto. She allowed mental access, and froze. His body was really messed up. To the point where the seal had essentially given her near full access, and was basically begging her to do anything. Hell, the flesh the seal was on had already dissolved, and if it hadn't been created by the literal deity of death and decay, it would have been destroyed. She frantically began investigating, gray power flowing. Her mind started creating new copies of memories, anything about what a healthy young boy should be like, anything about how Naruto actually was, anything about what positive or negative changes she could make. It was nearly overwhelming. He was missing damn near everything right now, of course, but his previous body was near death all the time anyway. His poor housing and constant break-ins had caused rough sleeping habits, wearing down his sanity. He never got enough high-quality food when young, stunting his growth. The poisons and particles added to his diet had increased his tolerances but had also done permanent damage. Kurama had deliberately healed everything as little as possible to force corrupted chakra to be used nearly all the time. True, that same process had enabled the boy to handle corrupted chakra at an unheard of level, but the continuous healing using said method was inefficient and had aged the cells involved incredibly, lowering his lifespan by dozens of years. If he hadn't been an Uzumaki with a strong body, he would not have made it past 40. As it was currently, his potential 100 to 200 year lifespan was impossible. And that didn't cover those blasted seals. That was likely a root ninja as well, from the fourth Hokage's memories, so that old man Danzo must have set those up. By unsealing them, he likely would have earned Naruto's trust thanks to the amazing advancements in ability, except of course for all the damage caused in him as a developing child. She was glad that the first emotion she remembered was Naruto's parents' love, because she was learning hate really quickly. Carefully she took the design of Naruto's brain after the seals were removed and his chakra system from that same moment. Utilizing the medical knowledge picked up from the three older and more complete set of memories, as well as the in-depth knowledge of Naruto's body from Kurama's constant attempts to murder the boy, she had this taken care of. Absently she disabled the pain receptors in his brain as she made sure to take care of this, the most delicate part, first. Right now his mind was the only thing holding the Reaper seal in existence, allowing her to fix anything. As she moved through his brain, she replaced each individual cell one by one with a near-exact copy made from her viral mass. Essentially his new brain would work through her body, allowing her complete access if she ever needed to help in the future, technically allowing her to gain full control of Naruto as well, but she had already gained a fair amount of affection for the child at this point. Distracted, she felt some of the brain that was exposed to the air through his exposed skull gather visual data as well. Her cells could really become anything honestly. The information needed for reconstruction was shared throughout her substance even if it wasn't perfectly duplicated in every cell. Yet, she expected great things from her body parts studying containment methods. She flinched. That ninja that had started all this was still here, and he was setting up fire. Explosive tags that would not only rip Naruto to shreds but then burn her. She wouldn't be able to fix him then. Almost without thought, a red-veined tentacle sank into the goo on the bed from the boy's heart, and a shard of bone nearest to the ninja was quickly mutated, turned into a sharp tip soaked with the fastest acting poison she could produce before it snapped out and hit the man in the neck. His hand, which had been about to detonate the tags, reflexively grabbed the thick tentacle that had thrust the spike, which formed more sharp thorns, reaching into his arm and digging deep. It was nearly instantaneous. His body collapsed forward as the tentacle pulled him toward the corpse of the little boy. Well, at least raw material was available. She absently sent more tentacles to harvest the jerk who attacked her Naruto. How dare someone hurt her cuddly whiskered cutie? He had those bright blue eyes, that sunny hair, and those whiskers. Still, while she was grateful to have been injected into Naruto, she recognized that had Kurama not attempted to surprise the boy until it was too late to do anything, then her little ninja wouldn't have had time to pull his little stunt, and would have gone through mind-shattering agony. Her hand waved off some blobs to process the masked man's mind as well. She didn't need it for personality development now that she had found herself, so to speak, but he was clearly another traitor of the village, and Naruto would likely like to know why he did it. He also might want to give any relevant info to the Hokage, since he clearly knew how to get past the old man's guards. She continued to examine each organ and bone, her viral cells slowly copying and replacing each section of Naruto's body with new cells. She would pause every few minutes and revise previous changes as she progressed. While quite an ass, Iguana had gone through some hellish training and gained some interesting resistances that she could pass along to the boy, so at least it wasn't a total waste. Parts of herself moved off to create shelving for copies of the various memories collected. Maybe Naruto would be interested in them later, or just watch some and hang out a bit. At least she wouldn't be deprived of senses, since the seals couldn't understand the concept of every cell in the body being replaced with her evolving viruses. Like his old body was now being made from sensory organs really. Which seemed gross now. Huh. She guessed the memories were still assimilating with her personality. Prototype ninja. Naruto slowly woke up, feeling the last of his chakra draining from the runic circle around him. Well, he was still in his mind seal thing. That was probably bad. Of course, he did wake up. So that was probably good, and there was no screaming fox right now, which was maybe good. A far too chipper voice interrupted his thoughts. Good morning. He blinked and looked toward the giant cage, which currently contained a bouncing, physically gifted red-headed woman, who was waving. He absently waved back, watching her smile grow. Hi. She ran up and waved again, just behind the bars. Good morning, Naruto. Just so you know, I disabled your pain receptors since I am still healing your body, okay? He sat up, noticing that the room was now vastly different. The floor was made of light gray stone, the walls a darker shade, and the roof was a solid black, near obsidian-like texture. The piping on the walls were far fewer and thicker, looked brand new, and had tiny labels on them that he couldn't read from here. Heck, the cage itself looked like polished marble at this point, instead of corroded iron bars. Naruto cautiously walked closer to the very beautiful woman. So, have you seen a giant fox around here? She nodded. His name was Kurama, by the way. I got inside the cage and ate him. He blinked. You're the black stuff? Her head tilted. Sort of. You know how bijou are made of sentient chakra, right? He shrugged. Sure, why not? At least now I know. So you ate sentient chakra and therefore... She turned and walked to a nice-looking red chair. Yep, I also became sentient. A person. But I didn't really have an identity at first. Your mom and dad left parts of their chakra in the Reaper seal, which I also consumed. The fox had also been sealed in several women in the past like your mom, so I got their knowledge as well. The other women were Uzumaki's as well, by the way. He blinked. I'm pretty sure I am in shock right now. Yet my head feels more clear now. Better even than when those seals cracked. His eyes narrowed. I'm also gaining access to some additional memories of my own that had been blocked off before. Suddenly he paused. Wait, what's your name? If you're not just a new version of the fox, I mean. She stood and gave an elegant curtsy. I'm a creature created from consuming a bijou and formed from viruses, with the memories of ninjas and dying souls. You may call me what you wish, but I haven't chosen a name yet. Naruto still had a blank facial expression. How about we call you Vixen for now? I honestly hit my freak-out marker way long ago. Vixen smirked. I'll take it as a compliment. If you want, I could add foxy ears and a tail? A bit kinky though. Naruto nodded. Yep, already hit my freak-out marker. Mind if I go to bed and handle this in the morning? She paused. You may have to wait a bit. I took out the man who originally injected me into you because he was about to blow up your apartment with explosive tags when you were really, really hurt. And I had to absorb him to get enough materials to build you a new body, which I am not done doing yet. He froze. I ate someone? Vixen blinked. Sort of. If it helps, I have been replacing your body with viruses, so I am pretty sure it doesn't count as cannibalism. Naruto just stared at the woman. Cute, but handle with care, clearly. Still. He was an ass, right? She nodded. I'm still processing his memories into things we can use, but I have found that over half of all the poisons and chemicals that have been used on you are either from him directly or from people he hired, along with a lot of the abuse and bad rumors. He also helped coordinate the mobs that chase you and made the reports about those mobs vanish before they got to the Hokage. Naruto absently thought about it. Well, screw him then. Promise me that we won't eat good people? Vixen relaxed on the red throne. Sure, Naruto. I won't consume anyone unless you tell me to. This was a combination of karma and survival really, it should be a common event. Although you might crave raw and rare meat more often. Easy to handle with a bit of hunting. The boy had basically the longest day ever at this point. So if I can't get out, what should I do while waiting for you to fix it all? She waved her arm, the goo of the chair expanding into a couch before reforming to red cloth and cushions. You could rest with me if you want. He absently stared at the comfy-looking couch before shrugging. Well, if you were gonna harm me you would have done so already. Why not? As he walked through the bars, half expecting her to open her jaws and consume him and the other half honestly not caring at this point, he was pleasantly surprised to make it to the couch in one piece. When she pulled his head onto her lap and stroked his hair, which was the most pain-free human-ish contact he had experienced in years, he felt his body relaxing more than it had in months. Falling asleep, he absently thought that if he had made a terrible decision, at least it was a comfortable way to die. Vixen meanwhile was trying not to coo or overwhelm the cute little boy. She was certainly going to ensure that he kept those adorable whisker marks. In the waking world, the dissolving corpse once known as Iguana slowly transformed into black ooze, which, along with all the other materials on poor Naruto's bed, began to absorb into the rapidly rebuilding body of the most unpredictable ninja. Even though most of his shell was still being reconstituted, the corpse-like body seemed to somehow relax and find peace. Hours later, the shift change of guards had a ninja nearly crap himself when he realized his predecessor was missing. The boy's room was covered in enough explosive tags to level a small town, and the child himself was using ripped but perfectly clean umbu clothing as covers. The Hokage would not be amused. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the god of shinobi, the professor, and currently pissed-off sort of grandfather to Naruto Uzumaki, was less than happy. He was currently watching the boy rest on a hospital bed while his personal guard ran information quietly near him, keeping him up to date on current village activities. After such a long and stressful night, this was just icing on the cake really. First he found out that Naruto had been failed during his exam mostly due to sabotage. His written test had been harder than the others, he had been given incorrectly balanced throwing equipment, had been matched up with the class prodigy during combat examination, and had been forced to exhibit the only technique that was impossible for a boy with a demon in his gut to achieve. Even then he should have scrapped by with the lowest grade. He had barely passed the harder test, yet someone had modified his answers. His equipment had actually scored as a pass, until one of the throws was disqualified for being thrown without dignity. His combat match had been called due to his uninja-like combat when he hit the Uchiha kid instead of taking all the hits like usual. And of course, the impossible technique requested. That traitor Mizuki, just some Chunin teacher really, had taken those steps and more just to ensure the boy's failure. The cause behind those actions was his planned treason against the village. Using Naruto as a distraction, he planned to escape after making the boy take an impossible mission to steal the forbidden scroll from the Hokage himself. And he would have escaped as well, free to give secrets to the village's enemies, until Naruto had done the impossible. With almost no chakra control, while wearing bright orange, without any official stealth training, that boy had snuck into the Hokage's office, broke several high-level security seals almost by accident without setting them off, found the true forbidden scroll from the dozens of fakes and duplicates, and utilized the Hokage's perversion against him to open an escape route. that he had avoided the tracking Umbu teams while also learning one of the more dangerous and difficult techniques on the scroll in less than a few hours went beyond unbelievable. So finding out that the boy had somehow taken down a Chunin, saved another Chunin, his teacher, Irika, protected the forbidden scroll from being stolen away from the village, and still avoided the Umbu teams while helping an injured man all the way back to his office. Well, he clearly had unknown talents. And right as he had begun to relax after such an eventful day, he had been given an alert that Naruto had been found in an unusual and deadly situation. That one of his more loyal Umbu guards had been murdered by another hidden traitor, who had then apparently stripped himself nude, gave his clothing as a blanket to a young boy, covered the walls with primed exploding notes, and vanished. Honestly, the ninja under his command were strange enough without some random murdering stripper running around. Yet poor Naruto seemed perfectly fine. A little thin perhaps, but snoozing away. And he wouldn't wake up. It would have been a larger concern if he had any injuries, but all the doctors had claimed he was beyond perfect health according to their scans. Just asleep, the old man sighed as he lit his ornate pipe again, breathing deep. At least the boy's current guard squad would protect him. These were carefully selected from his best, and were least likely to attack an orphan with a heavy burden. The usual TAMs had been sent out to gather info about the missing Umbu, Iguana. Before long, he would finally know what the hell had happened in that room, the one that an elite explosion squad was slowly clearing of overpowered explosion tags. Prototype ninja. Naruto nuzzled his pillow. It was warm, smelled like some sort of flower, and soft. If it would stop giggling, everything would have been great. His irritation fell away as fingers gently ran through his golden hair and softly stroked his whisker marks. If this was a dream, he would enjoy it as long as he could. Vixen was having the time of her life. Sure, she had just spent the last few hours frantically reconstructing her host into something mostly like he used to be, but she had also been able to rub those cute little whiskers on the boy's face and caress his shining bright hair. Naruto awoke fully with a jerk when he realized he was purring. He was not going to purr, he was a manly 13-year-old ninja, damn it, and he was immediately wrapped up in the warmest hug he had ever known. So cute. Ah, little Naru-kun, with your little whiskers and those eyes. He pulled away, flinching as he awaited the assault that Sakura always had waiting if he ever crossed the line, or asked her on a date, or waved, or was in the area. As he felt her arms pull him back on the chair into squishy hug land, he realized that those brain seals must have been hurting him more than he thought to pursue someone so abrasive and abusive and consider it true love. Naruto also decided that these hugs were awesome. As he was currently being hugged from behind, his head was pressed against soft somethings that were quite distracting. He relaxed even more, smelling those far-off flowers. Good morning, Vixen. Is my body fixed up? Her arm squeezed the boy. Not completely, but it's better than it was before. No scar tissue, and I fixed up the cells that were prematurely aged by Kurama's power when he healed you improperly. Each cell of your body is now a virus, so your healing will be through the roof and I'll have direct control of your systems if needed. Her bright blue eyes leaned over his head, looking into his. The seal was changed slightly due to how much of you I control now. Thankfully, I actually like you a lot thanks to your dad and mom's memories, not to mention how absolutely adorable you are. Naruto frowned. Handsome. Or rugged. Or manliest of men. He squirmed in the warm hug. Not adorable. Ninja. She squeezed and swung him into a huge hug. Oh, my little ninja of awesome not cuteness. How am I to ever let you go? Oh, I am going to miss petting you once you have to go wake up. Vixen gently placed him back on the stone floor and crouched down to his eye level. You know, you could modify the seal a bit more and visit whenever you like while sleeping. We could hang out, train, or just cuddle. Naruto blushed hard, but the idea sounded very tempting. I'm not going to just let you out, you know. If nothing else, the old man would freak if I released the seal on the same night I found out about the fox. She just waved an arm and walked toward the bars. I just want control over the inside of my cage. Maybe set it up to look like the outside, set up a steam or creek for us to swim in or something. They actually debated what would be reasonable. The boy honestly had developed a lot of trust in the woman for several reasons, not the least of which was her not hurting him when he absently had given her complete access to his mental avatar in the cage. He had really been out of it back then apparently. In the end, he helped her pass a copy of his senses into the seal, which she set up on some big screens and had set up some goo to act like a recording device, so they could review memories like movies and she could keep up with the world. In return, she had her viral cells pass a rough sixth sense of a sort to him, so he could feel his surroundings to a degree. After a long debate, he eliminated the mandatory fix me alerts and changed them to alert me message, so she would know what to fix if she wasn't already aware, but it wouldn't try to control her anymore. He also reduced her restrictions, so that she could more easily control the cells of his body, to prevent accidental infection of others, although his cells were individually intelligent enough to commit suicide if he got too far away unless told otherwise. Naruto had always tried to get along with others even when being hurt all those years. So finding a huge angry fox being replaced with a nice pretty red-haired lady made getting along almost too easy. She had shown him the QB's core though. Apparently the Biju generated their unending mass of chakra by splitting the energy into yin and yang portions and recombining it in a special pattern. From Kurama's memories, she found that combining pure yin and yang could be used to create raw matter or chakra from basically nothing, more than the process actually needed to operate. And from his memories, she found that his core was the most complex and the most efficient of all the Biju, hence why he could maintain his nine-tailed form. She had moved the Biju's core to a corner of her container, and helped Naruto seal it separately from her. Together they also set up a dense and complex combination of seals and her goo to purify the power as much as possible as it was created. After some more discussion, they decided to do almost the same thing to his chakra storage. Not his chakra coils, which generated new chakra over time, but his core that held that power in preparation for use. Now that the two cores were separated, and not frantically pushing power into his pure system, he would be able to easily tap into either or both as desired, and could control the mixtures of the two powers as even cleaned of hate and rage the corrupted Biju chakra would still act roughly on his system. Vixen had managed to convince Naruto to make the change mostly thanks to his new cells being able to consume Biju energy now. Instead of shortening his life, he would actually live longer using the corrupted power, which would force his virus cells to heal and rejuvenate when used. And since the cells would no longer die due to exposure, all that energy could be focused on fighting or amplifying the healing process even further. Naruto would normally heal so fast with just his new viral body that it would be comical. If he actively used his own chakra, he could regenerate lost body parts and change psychically closer to his biologically prime form. Not really getting older or younger, but optimizing his system to be efficient and healthy. If he used his new source of Biju energy though, he would age to 21 physically and stay there. Injuries would instantly vanish, and it was possible that he could simply absorb the energy in attacks used against him and add it to his reserves. Of course, any rocks or fire would still hit him even if he absorbed the power hurling them, but instant regeneration for the win. Needless to say, Naruto was ecstatic. Just when he gained access to a new training tool, Shadow Clone's Rock, he would now be able to recover from almost any training injury, allowing rapid development of an unheard-of scale. As the two discussed the benefits of consuming people, she might be able to copy their skills, bloodlines, memories, or more, or how to do the memory thing without eating humans. Seriously, Naruto got an ick feeling from the idea. Not that it would stop him if it was an enemy, and a bastard and they needed info or something, but the boy felt something else inside. In one day, he had gone from having a beast inside him to having a friend, and he had so few friends. He took that warmth from inside and held it close as the two continued their discussions. Right now, however, they were taking a break. Apparently some of Vixen's blobs had figured out how to create containment seals using only chakra, and every cell in Naruto's body was being upgraded. With this, he might even recover if only a few cells escaped total destruction. Oh, and those seals being added included a new power containment seal, which would be filled with either Naruto's chakra or Biju chakra. After all, the Biju chakra may be infinite thanks to the Biju core, but his wasn't. So now many cells in his body would act like a battery when needed. It would take a long time for his chakra to fill them all, and he was already low in energy as it were now, but the trouble would be worth it in the end. Naruto had never really considered the concept of immortality, but from now on he would be a very annoying enemy for others to fight. First there was the raw power of the 9-tailed Biju chakra, and he would be the first human container in history to be able to use nearly all of it. Even containers could get Biju chakra poisoning if they went above a certain percentage of power after all, at least before Naruto entered the stage. Secondly was his body construction. It had taken Vixen a while to get the concept through his head. It would allow him to sustain unheard of levels of physical damage and fully recover. Even the loss of his brain wouldn't matter after this final upgrade, as his cells would contain a continuous backup of his memories. And finally, he could consume matter, plant, human, animals in general, converted into a highly concentrated form Vixen had come up with. She called it biomass, and either attack or heal with it, storing the excess in his cell seals. He grinned from his new favorite position, hug number 13, on the couch, feeling her fingers comb his hair. She was rapidly becoming one of his most precious people, honestly. He was glad she was injected into his life. Vixen smirked. "Ah, I love you too, Naruto." His blush was vivid. Mental note, she was now hooked into his thinking process. Thank Kami he hadn't hit puberty yet, she was gorgeous. Her smirk grew. "Oh my, why thank you?" More cuddles. His face was on fire. Apparently there may have been a larger downside than he had initially realized. Prototype ninja. Naruto was walking back and forth in front of a large board wall inside what used to be Kurama's cage. It now looked like a large chunk of forest with a series of doors on a wall, labeled for the various subsections of the Reaper seal. He pointed at the board. "So to reiterate, these are the rules that should always be followed unless we decide otherwise, agreed?" Vixen was reclining sinfully in a slightly too small chair, her curves pressed together as she held her chin in thought. "I suppose so. Why can't I watch the screens during those times though?" He flushed. "Because it is embarrassing having someone watch me use the restroom. Or bathe. I already gave in to letting you watch me sleep, although I'm not sure why exactly." She nodded. "Because you are absolutely cute-tastic when you sleep. With your little frog hat, the whisker marks, and those footy pajamas. You could sell tickets really." Naruto frowned. Again with the cuteness. "Anyway, especially as I get older it will become very embarrassing. Nudity may not be a huge taboo with same genders when it comes to bathing, but I assume you don't want to be a pervert." Vixen grinned. "Well, almost every ninja I remember was a pervert at some level. Heck, your mom chose your name from a book by Jiraiya, who became an erotic novelist." She watched him face palm. "If you would like, you could watch me bathe? Then we would be even." He blushed as he held his head in his hands. "I have an attractive female pervert in my head." "Wonderful." Naruto felt warm arms wrap him up. "Only for you, Naru-kun. And any woman you hook up with when you get older. And maybe a friend or two who decide to join in." She couldn't hold in the smirk as his face got redder and redder, her lips whispering into his ear. He gently pushed her away and walked robotically toward the exit. "Well, look at the time. Guess I'd better wake up and stuff." "Yes, sir, nothing to think about here." "Nope." She chuckled and checked the board again. "Oh, Naru! You forgot to ban watching while you are busy with personal time." The door slammed close as he exited. Oh, he was just precious. The third Hokage jerked as Naruto sat up from a deep sleep, blushing deeply and growling. "That blasted woman! And I know she is doing it on purpose." They blinked at each other before the boy sheepishly waved. Hi, old man." He glanced around at the well-known room that was practically assigned to him at the hospital. Too many attempts on his life here had forced the boy to have his own accommodations. "Oh, back here again. Meh, could have been worse." The old ninja blinked before chuckling. "Indeed it could have been. Are you aware of what happened before you were brought here?" Naruto sighed and gave him a look. "I know more than I want to, honestly. Gramps, can you lock us down? If what I contained was a huge secret, then this one will likely blow it away." Hiruzen Sarutobi paused before nodding. A few hand gestures and the empty room became much emptier. The doors and windows were blocked by chakra conductive cloth, and he sat down next to the bed. "We are secured, Naruto." "What happened?" The conversation was long, notes were taken. Thanks to absorbing Iguana's memories, combinations of disbelief mixed with horror were expressed, and an old man felt positively ancient. He had been so close to losing his surrogate grandchild, whom had experienced years of abuse due to his failure at capturing a high-level threat from his own man. After nearly an hour of conversation, as well as a very strange introduction using the boy's body to a woman who apparently was a virus that had consumed the closet thing to a demon god that existed in this land, and she was also very polite. Surprisingly, the old man wasn't sure how to handle this. Oh, it would be a major secret, completely classified, no question. and he had already taken a break to command a large amount of meat, vegetables, and milk to be brought in for the boy's full recovery. But Naruto had basically just become a heavy hitter overnight, even without further ninja training. This had happened before, of course. The more recent example involved the Kurama clan, whom surprisingly shared a name with the nine-tailed fox according to Naruto. They had an amazing but rarely awakening bloodline that allowed them to make illusions real, fake fire that burned flesh and more. That same bloodline also killed many of the clan due to young children gaining power and then losing control. Naruto had a bit of a moment after hearing that until Vixen calmed him down, and had promised to work on his control first and foremost to prevent such a thing from happening to him. In the end, the Hokage watched as Naruto's arm became a black mass of red-veined tentacles and devoured the trays of food and large jugs of milk. He was called the Professor after all, and had seen bloodlines stranger than this one. Those fish people, for example. Or that one man who could partially turn into a cow. Even as he watched Naruto's body fill out with muscles and his skin look brighter and healthier, they continued to talk in a strange three-person, two-body way. No, she wasn't a bloodline. But she could consume people with bloodlines, and might be able to grant them to Naruto and pass them on to future children. The boy's face went red at the thought. No, Naruto was not contagious by default, although he could create viruses as needed if he had seen them before, or designed one. Yes, she was able to create antiviruses and antidotes. Yes, if Naruto was willing, she could create said antidotes, give instructions on how to create them, and provide them to the hospital, for a fee. Her boy needed funds. Naruto's blushes were cute. No, she wasn't loyal to the village, she was loyal to Naruto only. No, she wouldn't change that. Naruto was emphatic that as he was a future Hokage, she would eventually become loyal since he would sort of be the village at that point. Kind of. Yes, she could consume other bijou. They were weaker than Kurama after all, so why not? No, she wouldn't go hunting them unless Naruto wanted to. And he really didn't. Yes, she knew about past containers, as did Naruto. Yes, they had spent some time talking about who his parents were. No, they wouldn't tell anyone. Honestly, it was a conversation that went far better than the Hokage expected, especially once he found out that an 13-year-old had started randomly changing a seal that called death itself to power it. Now that had nearly given him a heart attack. Hiruzen had already passed on several pages of notes such as who had assisted Iguana, detained and sent to interrogation, what weaknesses the traitor had opened in the system to get his work done, and what resources he may have hidden or stolen, like the supplies from Orochimaru. He had also decided to delay the team formations for a month. He was the Hokage. This was not a majority vote people. To give the boy time to recover, train, and prevent accidents due to his increased power, Naruto had already squished a metal cup that had water in when he laughed at a joke. It would also give him time to reevaluate the graduated class, seeing as a traitor had been involved in most of the steps. As the old man unsealed the room and started sending off commands, he uncharacteristically grinned as he went to fight his worst foe, paperwork. Prototype ninja. Naruto smiled as he nearly bounced out of his apartment, heading to the training fields. Vixen had been a big help smoothing everything out with the old man. Apparently having the memories of women married to previous Hokages had given her a lot of experience with this. Gramps had also been very interested about the extra stuff Naruto had found out about the shadow clones, and had promised to update the Forbidden Scroll. Apparently only those with high Jonin or more reserves could even use it correctly, which no one was aware of before now. While the old man could make 5 or 6 clones safely the wrong way, the more time a person experienced over their life the more of a backlash would occur. As he had gotten older and older, the duplicated memories would of course grow larger as well, increasing the pain and danger involved. Now he could only make 2 clones the correct way, but as they processed the data, the significant lack of mental strain meant that the Hokage could actually use them for dull, repetitive tasks without a health risk. And he had immediately started talking about how much time he was going to save, having a true clone handle the paperwork and overwhelming number of council meetings. He had classified the technique update as well, basically having only Naruto and himself able to abuse this clone technique without mental issues. He may eventually let trusted others know, but this was too much of a game changer to risk being exposed to enemies or every Tom, Beep, or Kakashi. Now Naruto had a steady supply of meat, vitamins. Vixen had insisted on this, and he hadn't protested since he could absorb them without putting them in his mouth. And vegetables, again, arm consumption for the win. What he didn't need currently, Vixen was compressing into biomass and storing in his cell seals. He could now survive weeks without food technically, and they weren't even close to saturating his cells yet. He was a bit bummed out about how low his chakra levels were right now though. His coils were being constantly drained, filling the seals on the cells, such as the cells that made up his chakra coils. In contrast, it had only taken 20 minutes to fill all the Bija cell seals with power. As strong as Naruto was, that kind of energy generation was still beyond him. Still, Vixen had pointed out how this was the perfect time to build up chakra control, as he could only make about 10 clones right now, and their lower reserves would greatly assist in the chakra control exercises. Naruto had initially been pumped that Vixen knew not only this village's chakra control methods, but the more complicated and useful ones from the Uzumaki homeland, the village hidden in the waves. Most of his clan, and he still got a warm feeling knowing that at one point, he had actually had a clan, had largest chakra reserves at birth too, even if they were far lower than what he had. Their natural high levels had forced them to create a lot of variety when it came to chakra control techniques, and they traded heavily with other hidden villages to gain their training methods as well. But he couldn't learn them yet, as his reserves blew theirs clear out of the water in comparison. So he was starting at the most basic local level for now that was actually doable, leaf sticking and, new to him, tree walking. Of course, now that he had guidance, everything was going better. First of all, he had 10 clones to learn with and give refined experience as he learned. Secondly, he was doing the leaf method backwards, starting with his body plastered with leaves and trying to slowly reduce coverage until only a single leaf was being stuck. It was slow going. Tree walking was actually going a bit better, as it was designed with larger chakra use in mind, even if it was trickier than the basic leaf sticking exercise. It was actually trickier than wall walking, which most ninja everywhere learn. The bark can easily be crushed or torn off, requiring just enough chakra to reinforce the bark and hold onto the wood behind it, but not enough to cause the bark to explode trying to contain its own power. This technique was a bit of a village hidden in the leaves specialty, and could easily be combined with leaf sticking, in theory. Not that Naruto cared at the moment, as he cursed the universe after falling from the tree again. Eventually Vixen suggested he just lay down in front of the tree and practice sticking each foot and releasing it without causing tree damage. Thankfully time passes when you are young and eager to learn. As each of the 10 clones would reach a 30-minute mark, the one with the best achievement would dispel himself, updating the group. Naruto would pause from his gravity abuse to send a new one off to replace it. And as some of the clones existed for longer and longer without being popped, they began trying more bizarre chakra ideas when they got tired of that damned leaf. One of the most intriguing concepts happened when a clone decided to try and do a reverse tree walk, causing him to fly up uncontrollably and smack into a tree, dispelling. Everyone paused, their eyes wide. Combining the attraction of tree climbing with the repelling trick could make them wicked fast. It would even be useful in controlling the momentum of a fight. The clones had been receiving updates on Naruto Prime's advances at this point, as each popped clone was replaced with a duplicate of the master, who had received all updates up to that point. And when that clone popped, the refined information would hit everyone. So after the idea come out, all of them except for Prime tried to repel the ground, and 2 succeeded without dispelling. A quick refill of clones and 1 pop later, and all 10 could just barely hover off the earth. Until one accidentally pushed another, who slid like he was on ice. Vixen had laughed when all the clones and Naruto had stopped their training to try and become the world's best land skater. Sure, he could only go in straight lines and needed to be pushed, for now. But it was one heck of a good chakra exercise. Pushing chakra through the feet was difficult enough to begin with, and this was far more entertaining. Thus for the first week of training, he focused on earth skating, leaf balancing, and tree climbing, although he only really mastered the last 2. He could now skate forward, quite quickly too, but turning still wasn't working, as the dozens of smack trees could attest to. Vixen had stayed busy as well, reviewing the memories under her control, sharing the most interesting clips from Naruto's parents' lives while cuddling on the couch, and experimenting with strengthening various bones and muscle groups. It turned out that making all the muscles super awesome as Naruto requested actually got in the way, slowing the boy down, and lowered how much power he could apply since so much was wasted on stuff like his ear muscles. So while the boy had been exercising his chakra control, she had been testing upgrades around his body. Bones needed to break sometimes to reduce pressure wave damage that could injure organs, for example, but she could design where exactly that break would occur, and prevent splintering or other such issues and simplify future healing. It had also been a fun way to prank the boy, which he secretly enjoyed as well. She would slightly lengthen one leg or arm, causing his careful balancing to go haywire at hilarious times. Or strengthen his hand at the wrong moment so he squished a branch or something. He would have complained more, but this turned out to be amazing with building chakra control as well, forcing him to feel the energy in a more refined way to prevent her pranks from getting him. Oh, and had found out that he was naked all the time. Apparently he wasn't wearing his customized jumpsuit. It had been made of organic fibers and had dissolved with the rest of his clothing during his transformation. Vixen had simply duplicated his clothing using biomass, so it was technically a part of him, even though he could actually remove his shirt without issue. But once he lost focus, the shirt would either self-destruct or, if close enough, be absorbed back into him. It explained why he felt so much more comfortable in it, and how he kept changing into his night clothes without remembering undressing. Yet, while it was cool and let him do stuff like change clothing to match his environment, he still kept blushing when Vixen would randomly let out a wolf whistle while he thought about it. Stupid perverted virus. Itachi claimed that she was desensitizing him, so pretty women and female ninja couldn't just tie him up and walk off as he freaked out. He wasn't buying it, she was having too much fun. On the plus side, Vixen had introduced him to his new sixth sense. It utilized his individual cells to examine his environment, and displayed outlines of people and objects and animals and stuff as if he could see through them. Apparently Vixen had mixed the signals into his visual input somehow. They were easiest to see if they made noise, smelled strongly, or had lots of body heat or chakra, the stuff his cells could sense easily, in other words. It made hunting almost unfair, but fresh deer was a wonderful treat. Harvest most of the meat and store it for later, then consume most of the corpse and transform it into biomass or for Vixen to study. The process of consuming actually gave him a strong delicious taste when he did it, like the finest of ramen. He frowned. He missed ramen. Vixen sent the sensation of a full hug. No worries, Naruto-kun. Just collect the pelts I had you saved from our meals, transform into a random civilian, and you can sell them in the markets and get a big ramen feast. His grin lit up the room before he hesitated. Wait, wouldn't that be bad? You told me all that stuff about balanced meals and vitamins and all that, she grinned. Nope. Anything we don't need I'll just transform into biomass. Nothing will get wasted and you can still eat a healthy meal later. Go nuts. Naruto's smile almost split his head. A new friend who was his teacher, new skills, more food than he had ever been able to afford before, and now ramen? His life was going great for once. The boy dashed to get the carefully preserved pelts. He had places to be. Prototype ninja. The village hidden in the leaves was honestly full of confusion right now. Their Hokage seemed to have become 30 years younger overnight, or at least carried himself that way. Changes had been occurring at an unheard of rate. Now, instead of being chained behind his desk, thousands of documents had been processed easily. He had caught up with it, and at the same time had managed to fully read each item, catching dozens of power grabs and elements of treachery within them that would have slipped by his weary eyes in the past. The torture and interrogation office was full this week. Several spies had been caught, massive abuse of power cases prevented, flat-out stupid items tossed in the bin as deserved. Despite attending every council meeting, the Hokage seemed awake and not worn down at all. Several hidden plans had been frantically pushed back at this unexpected change, and several large-scale events had to be scrapped altogether or underground elements would have been exposed. The god of shinobi was having the time of his life, and now that he wasn't tied to a desk, he was able to anonymously wander the village under disguise, catching many things that had gone unreported by bribed and compromised ninja on patrol, whom would also be visiting the TNI office soon. It was honestly the largest house cleaning the village had experienced since the QB attack, and it was badly needed. Even as a certain organization hidden in the village frantically killed expendable agents and locked down projects, the civilian council almost felt personally under fire as dozens of their past proposals were now being brought back up and dismantled. The ninjas on the council were actually horrified at how much power had been stolen from them by untrained civilians. The irony of those same civilians now being buried under paperwork even more complicated than what they had shoved onto the Hokage's desk wasn't missed either. And through it all, he sat like a god watching the chaos get purged from his kingdom, smoking his pipe and overseeing decay and rot being cleansed from his people. Iguana should have never had lasted that long, working against his people. No one else would live to duplicate such a feat. Indeed, the will of fire was burning brightly in the old man, prototype ninja. Most of the children, Naruto especially, were oblivious to these changes. Adult stuff was adult stuff. We are gonna be ninjas. Or at least Sasuke's wife. Some kids were not that bright. Regardless, Naruto's second week of training had been amazing, mostly thanks to Vixen's insistence that he focus on supplementary abilities rather than big sparkly attacks. Her argument boiled down to this: in close combat you will win. Period. But you have to actually get close to them in the first place. So he focused on tree walking, water walking, and earth skating. That they increased his control, more sparkly attacks, was a great side effect. But he saw her point that unless he could get to his target, his cool attacks would be worthless. Then she focused him onto the replacement technique, and things got crazy. She had pointed out to Naruto that the high movement technique was basically a replacement where he focused on the air itself rather than log or a chunk of tree. Apparently he was ripping logs from trees by accident instead of using the prepared ones around the training areas. Way too much chakra. Her theory was wrong, but she didn't tell him that. The benefit became apparent after only a day or so of practice with clones. He had used it so much that he could replace himself with almost anything roughly his size without a hand sign, silent, and no visual effects or lost chakra clouds. His clones were now untouchable in combat. They also had the horrifying tendency of covering rocks or logs with explosive notes, etched into them using bijou chakra, corroding the surface, and swapping with them, the chakra involved in switching actually activating the now massive explosion. When he realized his clones got copies of his equipment, they didn't appear nude after all. Anything in his clothing got copied too. Naruto added some containment runes on his jacket, which was part of his body. Anyway, he could reach in easily and unseal a heavily rune-covered stone ready to explode, for easy replacement later in the battle. Only one could be used at a time though. The explosions tended to build on each other, and the rocks split into some very sharp shrapnel. For active combat, he began the practice of designating save-me clones, who would hide as inanimate objects with concealed chakra, whom would actively track the prime user, swapping if it looked like he would be hit by a major attack. As they would be destroyed after swapping, the newly moved Naruto would get the refined memories and know exactly where he was, as well as any traps or resources set up by his clone. His whole fighting style changed with this. Yeah, he could now take a hit that would destroy a building with no real issue, but at this point, he didn't have to take a hit at all. It would drive Sasuke team mad. Thanks to his clone training abuse, tree walking was mastered to the point where he could ignore the process consciously and just have it automatically work, forever. He even fell asleep on the underside of a branch once waiting for his clones to finish up their routine, and had been shocked to wake up just fine later in the day to find the clones betting on when he would finally fall. Water walking was improving, but still required a good amount of focus. His footing was also more than a bit wobbly. He would work on it, and he had managed to turn once while earth skating. Sort of. It involved half-tree walking with the tip of one foot while skating on the other foot, and some of his chakra digging into the earth sort of, and a bit of water walking on a chakra air bubble. Well, the crash had been spectacular, to Vixen at least, but it was sort of progress. He even managed to earth skate up a tree. Once. Mostly. And fell like 5 feet after. And he still wasn't sure how exactly that had happened. Still, it meant that he could theoretically learn tree skating. One day. Eventually, he was still working on it. Naruto had noticed that the shops had been far nicer recently, even when not in disguise. He assumed it was from his wardrobe change and his new body structure. It was kind of neat, even if it likely wouldn't last. While his cells were still sucking his chakra dry, he had managed to increase his overall capacity with careful experimentation with Vixen, expanding his coils using purified bijou chakra and then healing the damage. So now he could handle 20 clones to work with instead of only 10, and the increase in learning was actually more than simply double. With one clone, you learn twice as fast. With two, one would pop helping the other understand the concept better before IT popped, increasing the quality of what you learned, even if the time training and content covered was the same. With 20 clones, by the time Naruto popped them all, one after the other of course, all the information was rich and detailed, as well as very nuanced and covering very experimental concepts. By only popping the best ones and replacing them, it was like the other 19, and Prime kept having eureka moments all the time, so his control of the shadow clone technique was rapidly reaching a level beyond master just through use alone. It would go well with his advancing tree walking skills and hopefully soon to be awesome water walking skills. Earth skating was still proving to be one of the hardest exercises he had ever tried, hell, hardest he had ever heard of. Vixen was proud. At least by the end of the day, he could abandon his horribly sore body and enjoy some cuddle time while sleeping. He may be getting addicted to it. Hugs rocked. Prototype ninja. Vixen had come up with the opinion that Naruto's fighting style didn't really exist. He had power, reflexes, and healing, but his fighting style at the moment was replace myself instead of dodging, countering, etc. Oh, he was good enough that he could easily live with just this, but the less abilities he needed to use the more power for fun skills later on in the fight. So she had convinced him to ask the old man for someone who knew taijutsu, fighting techniques. After an intense question session about how he felt about spandex and the color green, and hadn't that conversation been awkward, he had been sent to this training ground. One that sounded like it was infested with some sort of shouting theater group. He subconsciously shifted his clothing into a brown camouflage pattern as he walked. Vixen had pointed out that multiple shades of brown with undefined or semi-random shapes would be better for hiding, and then proved it by ambushing him in her woods a few times. On one side was a cute girl with brown hair who was spinning something sharp around her fingers and a boy who was probably a huge yay based on how far that stick must be up his ass. Oh, and he had blank or white eyes. The other side of the clearing was a blur of green and the sound of impacts as a man with huge eyebrows was crashing into a smaller version of himself. They also seemed to have a strong opinion on youth. Hopefully not a euphemism for anything. Naruto slid next to the girl, watching the two. This type of spar had clearly happened before, as the patterns were toned down for the smaller fighter to keep up with the massive speeds displayed. Idly waiting with his hands in his pockets, he watched, and watched. Damn, they had enthusiasm. And endurance. Turning to the girl, he gave a small smile. Hi! She nearly leapt straight up. Eep! Instantly Naruto found himself held by the large green-clothed giant and looking face first at a fairly threatening fist from the smaller green boy, whom now stood between him and the girl. The stuck-up one was clearly shocked but was trying to look cool, aka I didn't move. Naruto blinked as he twisted, feeling his arm pop out of its socket. Oh. Hi. Didn't mean to interrupt your spar. I just got tired of waiting and wanted to introduce myself to your team, since they were just watching. He didn't catch the horror on the other kids' faces as he continued to turn, his arm audibly breaking and the sound of torn flesh making quite an impact on them. Are you the one Gramps said was really good with taijutsu? The teacher blanched slightly at the massive damage done to the child's arm, quickly releasing it. I apologize for the rough handling, you youthful student. Will you accept help getting the hospital? Naruto paused, looked at his arm, and it made a nasty-sounding crunch as it forced itself back into his socket, all blood being absorbed into his clothing. No worries, I heal really well. I just found out though that my education was kind of deliberately sabotaged, so I don't really have a fighting style now. He looked at the amazed team. I asked old man Hokage and he said if I had any issues finding a good style for me that I should come here and ask you, Might Guy-sensei. I am willing to work hard with any advice you would feel comfortable providing, the stuck-up boy interjected. If you are unprepared, then it is your fate to fail. Accept it, and abandon such pitiful attempts at fixing your obvious flaws. Naruto blinked at the boy. Well, funky too. Turning away from the sputtering child, he grinned at the giggling girl. So like I was saying, hi. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage of this village and soon-to-be awesomeness. What's your name? She shook his hand with a grin. Tenten, future weapon mistress and accurate with anything. The green-clad boy threw up a fist. YOSH. I am the most youthful Lee. Do you truly wish to join us in our youthful exercises to prepare ourselves for the glorious future? He blinked. Yes? Tenten sighed. I should warn you now, they train at unusual levels. You probably won't last 5 minutes until you get used to it. Naruto grinned. If I use all my abilities, I only need to sleep 15 minutes every 3 days while continuously working. I'm not afraid of hard work. Most of my life, that was all I had going for me to begin with. Suddenly he was lifted into the air as the green giant gripped his collar. YOSH. Then join us as we explode into youthfulness. We shall start with 100 laps around the village wall, so you can prepare yourself for when we can get you some weights to prevent the loss of your youthful spirit." He gave a hesitant smile. "Oh. Okay. Well, let's go then," 2 green suits screamed YOSH, easily overlapping the brooding white-eyed boy and the girl as they groaned. This would be an experience. Prototype ninja. Naruto was so tired that even in his mind, Vixen had to drag him to the couch for some cuddle time. Once the crazy eyebrow dude realized that he wasn't getting tired, he had quizzed him about all sorts of stuff, then created a training method custom tailored for his inhuman abilities and recovery rate. And it had worked wonders for this last week. While his 20 clones had been trained in a fighting style that focused on avoidance and hard-hitting counters, almost no kicks, you can't dodge or accelerate properly without legs on the ground in this style, his main body had been through hell. It had almost been worth it considering the shocked looks on the 3 kids when he took a full-strength punch from Guy-sensei and recovered near instantly. Of course, finding out that he didn't have to hold back when sparing Naruto had made Guy ecstatic and damned ruthless. He forced Naruto to continue practicing his new fighting style, while Guy himself changed style constantly. He was a master fighter, no doubt about it. Each style was individual and polished in quality to an unholy sheen. It was a rough process, trying to defend such attacks. Naruto grew from this though. The whole point was to provide experience about other styles and how to handle them with his new one, but he was learning tactics and more along the way. With his amazing learning capacity, near-instant recovery time, and being taught by a true professional, Naruto was beginning to be a scary fighter even without his other near-godlike abilities. The advances were even more pronounced when considering that Vixen was actively monitoring which muscle groups were being used the most and enhancing them, causing Naruto to require less oxygen and produce more power efficiently. Naruto's progress was damn near terrifying. Even Neji, stuck-up Uchiha boy, was now watching him warily. He groaned as Vixen's fingers began working out his knotted muscles, both in this mindscape and releasing tension in his physical body at the same time. "Best friend ever." She worked on his shoulders as he relaxed, smiling gently. This had been a lot of fun for her as well. While her cutie was relaxing in here with her, she was able to disconnect his senses. While keeping them open watching for trouble, ninjas made paranoia look laid back. Without Naruto feeling it, each night she experimented with modifying his body and blood chemistry to try and provide new weapons or tools using his own flesh. Generating his ninja tools using only bone was simple. Learning how to modify those bones to be sharper and stronger had taken days. She also used tiny parts of his hand and arm as a testing area, designing a variety of muscle types and hardened skin, even bone plating. After Naruto had eaten or absorbed those animals, the raw parts using his arm, anyway, she had been experimenting with recreating horns, scales, fangs, and claws. She had also requested that Naruto eat or absorb any unknown plant he finds. They had already absorbed dozens of the common ones by now, as well as new animals, to help her in her research. Hearing what she was attempting to do, he had been ecstatic, sending random clones to gather new materials to be absorbed in the morning each day. As they were still fixing his body, they hadn't started weapons practice with his new bone tools yet, but he was almost bouncily eager to learn. Anyway, she could now make his hands into claws or whatever easily, but she wanted something more. It took a week and a half to slowly develop what she was calling the biomass weapon package. Most of it wasn't ready for use yet, nor were they tested, but Vixen felt that real progress had been made. At this point she could quickly modify Naruto's limbs, turning one into a sharp blade with twitch muscles that could slice so fast it was near invisible. Very fast, very accurate, but she wanted the blades of bone to be more compressed, with a higher metal content, which was not really an option right now, as the normal human body had trace amounts of metal. Defense had gone better. It took much longer to activate that state, to transform his body, but the prototype defense build had huge cords of muscles and heavily redundant bone structure in the chest and arms. Bone plates like armor covered in horns, claws, and teeth covered his front and arms, allowing close-range shredding and wide-area coverage from arrows, kunai, and other long-range weapons. Vixen had been trying to come up with a combination of bone, tooth, and claw to make something sharp, hard, and new for defense, but it had been slow going. The design of her whip fist weapon had gone badly. Initially it utilized a system similar to a frog's tongue, too weak, easily cut, torn, or ripped, to hurl a blade long distance. The explosive gas attempt, custom chemicals generated from his body combined to explode, caused internal burns, part of Naruto's wrist to blow out, and the fist went like 2 feet before falling to the dirt. She frowned. Naruto hadn't been mean about that attempt, but the giggles had been annoying, after he stopped grumbling about the pain. Vixen needed some sort of force generation that wasn't muscle, torn in the frog tongue method, gas, or liquid, or at least, one that didn't fail so badly. An exploding arm is only cool if it wasn't your exploding arm. Still, a giant harpoon of bone and muscle sounded awesome enough that neither she nor Naruto had given up on its design. In apology to her favorite boy, she had designed something he called Smasher or Hammer Fist, which was basically just really big heavy muscled bone at the end of his arms, so he had a huge hammer-like tool. It could knock down trees just by smashing the ground alone, and the boy had far too much fun testing it. All these changes had really defined her personal ability to modify Naruto's body, and she began changing his default one to include these more impressive, if not naturally occurring, materials. Stronger bones with carefully constructed fat deposits for cushioning and vibration dispersal, designed with crumple areas for easy future healing. Additional flexibility for the smallest bones, and other bone modifications based on what she pies from Naruto's spars with Gai-sensei. Each change trying to find the best physical setup for Naruto's style. Full nights of cuddling, fun experimentation with her new consciousness and his body, nothing naughty yet, sadly, and enough materials to truly begin building up a significant storage of biomass? Life was awesome. Feeling what time it was, she blinked Naruto's eyes and reformed him into what she now considered his base state. Slightly taller than before his incident, thankfully his full growth spurt hadn't happened back when Kurama was in charge, significantly stronger muscles and bones, a larger, and slower breathing, heart, a few strong but thin bone plates just under the skin, almost like chain mail in shape that covered various pressure points and weaknesses in his body. She internally blinked, and had her body inside the seal tap Naruto's relaxed forehead. Naruto, did I already tell you that I have been changing your body recently? Bright blue eyes blearily opened. No, I don't think so. More healing? Vixen shook her head while stroking his hair. No, not all of it. You know I've been doing stuff while you were training with that bushy eyebrow man with green clothing, right? He looked more awake. Gai-sensei? Yeah, I thought you were teasing me while I was training. She shook her head. No, I've been trying to improve your body to handle that training better, to make you stronger. Naruto finally sat up and settled, giving her a look that surprised her with how much trust was in his eyes. Well, like what? He missed her quick blush. The basics were probably obvious. I watched where the training was damaging your body and experimented with making those areas stronger or more limber, thicker or thinner. Your body is now pretty much optimized for your fighting style, although I am still messing with it. She continued after his nod, although his grateful expression made her feel warm inside. It also resulted in you having a larger and slower heart, larger lungs, and me basically removing your stomach and intestines. At the point the food would have reached your stomach, you just absorb it like you do with your arm tentacles. I just make you feel full when you eat roughly as much as you used to in the past. She blinked as the boy suddenly had a huge smile. Are you saying that I could eat ramen forever without getting full? Vixen chuckled. Well, you could, but that would get expensive. I can, however, save the memories of the best bowls of ramen you eat, let you rank them here in your mind, and recreate those memories here to enjoy them forever without making yourself sick or poor. She smirked at the overjoyed child. Of course, you will have to eat all kinds of different ramen and topping combinations to make your mental copies more lifelike. But that won't be an issue, will it? He exploded into an awesome pose. This world shall find a wandering hermit, dedicated to truth, justice, and the search for the finest of all ramen. Naruto blinked. After the Hokage thing. Wow, that whole dedicate your life to ramen concept could really tempt a guy. She laughed before they both settled a bit. Well, ramen devotion aside, after I got your body to a certain point I thought about how I launched that bone spike into that ninja that tried to kill us. Our body is able to use biomass to create all kinds of chemicals and poisons and organic materials, like your clothing. The wink left the boy red-faced and shuffling on the seats slightly. Naruto looked down, playing with his outfit. Is that why my outfits had bone buttons and zippers and stuff? Vixen waved a hand. I tried coating it with a thin layer of metal instead of just dense bone, using the vitamins to help. We may have to find someone with a bloodline that can break down raw metal first before we can make normal buckles and stuff out of it. She leaned forward. You know I multitask really well, like you and your shadow clones really. So aside from the testing we do together, I also take control of your body while you sleep and do experiments with our stuff then. I've been doing advanced testing to create new body forms for you, or weapons or whatever. Vixen grinned as Naruto went from shocked, to thoughtful, to really eager. He nearly bounced off the couch. Tell me about what weapons you came up with, Databayo. What kind? How many? Her smile was softer than expected. Well, I've made a breakthrough on the bone weapon thing we were working with. They are much denser, but by shaping the insides like a honeycomb, with lots of gaps, I found out we can fill them with cleansed bijou chakra. That gives them the weight and density you expect from normal kunai or whatever, and you should be able to make them like that nearly automatically based on how I inserted the information into your memories. Naruto almost instantly felt the bone shifting in his palm, and growing into the sharp knife. He frowned. Well, we can't use this for now at least. Too recognizable, even if you don't feel anything fox-like. What happens if it pierces someone? She frowned. Best use it on enemies only. Flesh will melt off the target, possibly explode their chakra coils as well depending on where they were hit and how fast they removed it. Still, a nice long-range damage dealer. It will also damage any weapons it smacks into, even if it doesn't have a sharpened nature like wind to cut through them. Bijou chakra is rough stuff even after we purified it, he hummed. This had been a problem for a while, really. Normal bones shaped like knives were naturally porous and light, no blood or whatever like a freshly harvested one, so they were rough to throw and made little impact. They had learned how to heavily compress the bone knife and build it in layers, and while it was still a bit too light and had a rough time piercing, it did tend to explode into sharp bone shrapnel, which made it great for unarmored opponents and animals. Unless they had chakra-reinforced skin, the heavily compressed bone also took much longer to generate. Regular bone was near instant. This new honeycomb knife was even faster, although apparently he could charge it up with bijou chakra over time for a huge boom. Compressed bone took like 8 seconds. That was fine for something like a sword or axe or something, but taking 8 seconds for a single-use disposable throwing weapon? That was just silly useless. It was on the list of things to train up, just near the bottom of the list. As others could recognize bijou chakra, even if it looked strange, purified bijou chakra from the QB was golden for some reason. He would have to use it as a last resort option as well, at least until his status had been leaked or exposed. Vixen drew his attention away from the new knife he had generated, glowing gold. Make sure you get a lot of milk for calcium if you use the bone trick a lot. She moved on. The second big thing, our body changes. Your body by default is built to be fast, accurate, and able to dodge. The alternate one is massively powerful, good reflexes, but much slower in comparison. You know your hammer fist, right? Naruto grinned and gave a sharp nod. She tapped his nose and he felt his body changing, even though it was still in his mind. His chest snapped apart and started bulking up almost like a balloon, cords of muscle and bone building and layering, his arms dislocating as the sheer mass forced his body into a huge mass of bone and steel muscle, now over 8 foot tall. His shoulders were as wide as he had been tall. As he nearly fell over from his new body shape, his left hand and arm bulged and began sprouting teeth and sharp white points from the front as it swelled into a large shield. What could have been a hammer fist had flattened so his wrist was connected to a huge circle of bone, tooth, and even a ring of flexible claws on the outside. Oh, and he had an extra elbow now. And his joints were strange. He could now move the shield 4 or 5 feet in any direction, any orientation, and his massive arms seemed to easily lock together to hold it against future attacks. Vixen slid a finger against his other arm, which seemed to sort of implode. Like all he had was a single blade near his elbow, a short one at that seemed wicked sharp. I'm still working on this, but basically this body is built to defend your future friends, family and teammates. She smiled at his touched expression and waved a hand. Your body like this has almost everything duplicated, extra lungs and heart, and a lot of chakra-reinforced flesh, skin and bone for defense. Your shield is the most durable thing I could imagine, and the front parts will actually explode forward when hit to damage someone trying to smash you and reduce the power of piercing attacks or thrown weapons. It regenerates quickly, of course, and there is a very strong layer in the back as a last resort, but if you use this form too much you could run low on biomass to heal yourself. That's why I want your main weapon in this form to be the whip fist. Her hand was light on his other elbow. If you are protecting, you probably can't dodge or move much without putting them in danger. I'm still building this weapon, but you should be able to launch either bone spears or this blade, which is connected like a whip. The spears or blade can be poisoned too, with either chakra suppression, sleep, confusion, or dissolving substances. She looked up at him. Those were in the goo injected in you. Eat or absorb more poisons and plants, and I will try to improve your options. Naruto grimaced. Can't say I love the idea of dissolving someone or causing instant death, but making people unable to use ninja attacks or fall asleep could be really useful. His frown got deeper as he considered that crazy Umbu. And I suppose a fast, painless death would be better than letting some insane man blow up part of the village. I really don't like the idea of going to poisons right off the bat though. Not the lethal ones, Vixen nodded. I'll focus on ones that cause lethargy, sleep, loss of chakra control, and temporary sense disruption. Seeing Naruto's blank face, she giggled. Unless you ask for a change, your projected spikes will try to make an opponent not be able to see, hear, smell, feel, or chakra sense for about 8 to 10 minutes. If they have no poison resistance, then they will also feel very sleepy and unwilling to do much. His smile came back. Heh, honestly sounds like a pranked Adebayo. I can live with that, as long as it's not a long-term thing. And I will get samples of other stuff for you to play with, okay? She squeezed him into a tingly hug. Thanks, Naruto-kun. I'll make sure any spikes you shoot when training will not be poisoned unless you say otherwise while I work on these, she sighed. Now for the rough part. Consumption techniques. With a lot of practice, you will be able to touch someone anywhere and my virus will be able to infiltrate them, copy their mind completely, and return to you for us to examine at our leisure. But that will take practice. And until I gain that level of precision, most of my consumption techniques involve literally absorbing the person. Naruto paled slightly before nodding. Enemies only then. Bad enemies at that. Vixen waved a hand. Full consumption means I can scan them for any and all bloodlines, even if they are recessive or only partially activated. I will get a full copy of their mind, as well as the body reflexes they use to activate them. And we get biomass. She leaned forward. We can also get good info working with a dead body, depending on how recently it died. People's minds require blood and oxygen, but they don't instantly decay just cause someone cut off their head or whatever. Heck, the Yamanaka can gain at least something from a head that has been sealed for 2 weeks. Naruto groaned. So I should consume enemies that died in battle? She nodded. If you need a body for a bounty, I can consume and replace the brain with an exact duplicate, even if said duplicate will be ourselves, which would then commit suicide. Just wait 10 minutes after we do that so that our virus can destroy itself, and it will be as if we never did anything to it. He gave a weak nod. Any other benefits? She held up a hand and began to count. Aside from gaining a lifetime of secrets, training, and knowledge, the biomass would heal most if not all your wounds instantly. If you don't consume the metal in their clothing, you can recreate their form and outfit, and utilize their stored mind to be them, act exactly like that person, and infiltrate nearly anywhere. Her hand absently began tracing the massive cords of muscle his mutated body had as he flexed the massive bone and muscled shield. It would be amazing for anything involving infiltration, as it takes only a second or two to happen, and their body will be stunned from our virus during that whole time. So great for assassination, rescue, anything where that person won't matter later on. And I mentioned the whole lifetime of learning thing, right? Naruto absently raised his right arm, seeing somehow from his altered right eye something odd. Had it grown wider? He clearly could focus, almost like zooming in with binoculars with it, and there was a bright dot that showed where his bone cannon was aimed. He aimed at a tree. Can I make these arrows honeycombed? Like the bijou knives? Vixen paused, eyes seeing things he couldn't. Yes. You lose about 30 feet in range though, cause your regular arrows are compressed and spiraled shaped for accuracy. At least the heads are. The target you see is calculated using your senses automatically, adjusting for wind and gravity and all that, which is why the dot doesn't stay still when your arm does. Naruto absently flexed his right arm, left shield almost unconsciously covering his body and creating a stabilizing platform for his new launcher. The white streak went through the tree. That was like a bazillion times better than the knife tests. He glanced at her. Vixen shrugged. I haven't got the launching system for your main blade yet, but from the many failures I did manage to really spin those arrows before they are launched. It's basically a very sharp, very quickly spinning drill. Naruto nodded, had a huge grin on his face, and fired as fast as he could. Within moments the distant target had a lot of bones in it. Vixen grinned at his stupefied expression. Part of building that cannon was the ammo. Your wrist has 16 bones, your hand 38. That's 54 arrows that get generated for your arm cannon initially, and they can fire very quickly, but it takes like 8 seconds per bone to replace them after. She tapped his arm, which rapidly shifted into a long bone sword connected at the elbow. This is the reserve blade, to defend yourself as your arrows regrow. You will be stuck with it until you regrow enough to make an arm again, unless you want to just dump some biomass on it, which would speed it up by a whole lot. He frowned for a moment then sighed. If I can't handle a threat with over 50 poison-piercing arrows, there would be no point in firing more anyway. The recharge is fine. I would rather save the biomass for regrowing the shield from damage as fast as possible instead. She nodded. My thoughts too. Anyway, about the consumption stuff, I'll store any minds, bloodlines, or whatever you absorb to be used whenever or however you want. Eventually you will be able to consume someone by touch, even if you use the whip fist or the ground spikes. His head snapped up. Ground spikes? She sighed. You would slam your fist in the ground, send biomass out, and create a field of spikes that would consume any non-ally they touch. Any ally would be healed of some of their wounds instead. She shook her head at the pleading expression on the boy's face. No, it doesn't work yet. It would take far more biomass than you have right now, and even then I am working the bugs out of it. You would need much more experience in consumption and using my viruses to heal, which I'm not entirely sure works right now anyway. If you tried to heal someone, I might eat them by mistake. He slouched. So, more training? She sighed. Yeah. Much more training. His body seemed to crumple in on itself as he reformed into his normal, bright golden-haired and gorgeous blue-eyed self, and was sucked back into a hug on the couch. She sighed. Anyway, I wanted to tell you all this stuff later, but it's almost time to go to your team assignment. I just wanted to tell you that even though you have no stomach, organs, inner ear, spleen, nose hairs, and so forth, that I knew about it and it was fine. Also, don't freak out if parts of you feel a bit strange since I added bone and muscle here and there to cover weaknesses, like chakra points and all that. The boy hesitantly hugged her back, not seeing her smile brighten. Thank you, Vixen. You've done so much for me, and well, I really appreciate it. She lightly kissed his forehead. Just remember that when you hit puberty, foxes can have several vixens, so go find me some adorable sister wives for me to tease you about. He jerked like he was slapped. What? Vixen cooed. Ah, look at how adorable your red face is. Naruto tried to get off the couch as she dragged him back on. Get off me, you perverted fox, she grinned. Never. Kawaii for the win, and then poked him on the forehead. He woke up. Apparently, while she was controlling his body, she had gotten him dressed, sat him at his breakfast table with what appeared to be freshly heated instant ramen, and his clock was next to him letting him know that it was time to get ready for class. Oh, and his face was 10 million degrees and in danger of exploding out of embarrassment. After calming down a bit, he gave a rough chuckle. He still wasn't sure if she was serious or not with that last bit, but it had been a good prank really. He froze. She was going to give him hell once he actually hit puberty. He dug into the warm meal, honestly feeling a bit touched that she had gone through this effort. No one else ever had. Perverted or not, she was becoming a very close friend, so this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comment section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.